Edmonton's real estate market has been on a tear since the start of 2025. It's been all over the news. Prices climbing across every sector. But now things are starting to level out. We're seeing fewer listings, fewer sales, and months of inventory is actually starting to creep up again. In most segments, we're either flat or just inching along. So the question I pose to you is, are we heading for a correction? Or is this just the market stabilizing after a wild run and we should be good? You've probably seen the headlines somewhere, whether it's your local news or a newspaper or maybe some blog, or you listen to some other realtor talk about how the market's going to be crashing here. But honestly, instead of adding to the noise, I'd rather just walk you through the actual data, give you my take, because at the end of the day, you can look at the data, look at the numbers, and then you can decide what's really going on. And real quick, if we haven't met, my name is Richard. I'm a Canadian real estate agent. I make videos all about Canadian real estate. So if that's something you want to stay on top of, or you just find an interest in, hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next one. All right, so here we are talking about Edmonton's home price index here. And I put what I wanted to do here as well is just provide you with a couple months prior data, just so you can see the price trend here. And then we also got a graph here, which is very interesting because if you've looked at home prices province by province, Edmonton has had some crazy gains here in the last like couple months here, as you can see in the graph here. December all the way to basically like 3 months, we're gaining pretty much like almost 40 grand, which is insane. And so just looking at April's stats here, we've gone down actually 0.2%. May, it's kind of hovering. June is hovering. So as we can see, we've had crazy gains in the beginning of 2025, but now they're stagnant. And so the question that I brought up earlier was just like, what do we think what's going on here? Do we think it's going to crash? Do we think it's not? So I'm going to show you some more stats here, and then you can decide what you think here. And so back to basically new listings hitting the market. So April, May, June here. April, we had 10% more month over month, and then listings in May, 28% almost month over month more. And so June, we actually had a little bit of a retraction in new listings that have come to market here. But as you can see, year over year, we're leaps and bounds ahead. So we have a lot more new listings hitting the market. And then when it comes to sales, right? So when we compare it over last year, it was down year to date. But then April, we had almost 1,900. May, we had 2,000. June, and so we've seen an increase and then a slight decrease. So it appears by the last 3 months, things have been stabilizing. And then moving on to months of inventory, which is kind of an indicator of we have this much inventory and this many sales. And so if we had no new inventory, or how many months I should say, would it take to sell the inventory we have? And so as we see here, a massive influx of inventory come from April to May, but now June, it's not as much inventory. So it's slightly growing here. So we're slightly getting more inventory. It appears that like new listings have kind of plateaued, sales have kind of plateaued. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in the next little while here. But I just wanted to break this down house type by house type, because that stats I just showed you here was all to do with the average of all the residential sales. So that includes apartments, townhomes, detached houses, all of it. And so this is kind of more of niching down into segments by segment. So depending on what you're doing or what you have to sell or what you're looking at buying, this is where it's going to be more, informational for you. And so this is detached here. We have April, May, June. Again, kind of telling us a story here that, April, they're 525, May, 524, June, 515. And so we're seeing that plateau, but then a slight dip, it appears. And so days on market, it's going to take you 29 days. Last year it took you 29 days. So there's no massive shakeup there. And then what I've attached is this paragraph below here. This is basically copy and pasted from the Real Estate Board of Edmonton, talking about detached homes and what is going on there. And so let's get into it here. Detached homes remain in demand, selling 2.6 more units than the same month last year, and prices continue to trend 6.4% higher year over year, despite a monthly dip of 1%. And so just to clarify, what they're talking here is all of Edmonton and Greater Edmonton. And so the stats are going to be slightly different than this, but the theme still remains the same. New listings were 16.3% higher compared to June of 2024, helping ease tight conditions, while these new listings slowed during June Detached properties stay on the market an average of 2 days longer than the previous month. And so it's kind of telling a sign of like, are we seeing a shift here happening? Because properties are on the market 2 days longer. New listings have slowed. It's kind of painting a picture that things might be here to change. And then moving on to semi-detached house prices. Again, April was 424, May was 436. We actually saw an increase in activity during May, and then June has kind of backed off a little bit here. And so year to date, or year over year, I should say, they're all up still when it comes to house prices. And again, when we look back earlier to that graph we had there, there was a massive incline. And so people who've owned properties beforehand, they're still up quite a bit. And so days on market, still pretty much the same. And then when it comes to words of wisdom from the real estate board, while semi-detached sales saw month over month increase of 5.6 sales. Sales were down 9.3% from last year in contrast to other property categories. Influx of 449 new listings reflect a 26.5% increase compared to June of 2024, although average sales prices remain steady, a modest 4.1% year-over-year growth in prices suggests balanced conditions. Well, we'll see what happens here in the next couple months, but it appears things are balanced in the semi-detached market, and so that is going to be basically duplexes. Now moving on to row and townhome stats. April was 307, May was actually 299, so this actually saw a decrease. And then June, it kind of stayed stagnant here. And then when you're looking at year over year, we're still up a substantial amount from last year. And then moving on to average days on market, we can see here that row homes or townhomes are taking longer this year to sell than last year, 4 days difference. And then row homes continue to show solid year over year price growth with an average price of 309,811, higher than June by 6.8%, although the pace of sales slowed by 13.7% when compared to May of 2025. With 415 sales in June, this category still shows annual increase of 2.5. A 3-day monthly increase in number of days on market may reflect increased choice for buyers. And so we're all kind of seeing a trend here where like days on market are starting to increase. Sales are slowing. And, you know, they're bolstering about this price growth that's happened, but it was all in like the beginning, the 3 months worth. And so are we at the tipping point? Like that's just the interesting part here. Now moving on to condos and apartments. Here we got April. We have $201,000 in April, 195 in May, 195 in June. So prices are relatively stagnant, let's just say. Looking at selling a condo, it's going to be about 43 days. And then what they're saying about the apartment condominiums remain a relatively stable segment with modest price growth of 0.3% month over month and 1.4% year over year. Sales volume showed a downward trend of 1.9% at the end of the spring, but increased 2.9% over last year. Supply in this category remains strong with 10 point more new listings compared to last year. So more listings, sales volume decreased, but increased. It's like when they compare it to last year, it looks good, but when they compare it month over month, it's like, again, we're kind of on a slight decline here, despite a month over month decrease in 14.5%. So they're painting this picture that everything is going well, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Now, I just wanted to comment on what the real estate board discussions have been. So Darlene Reed here has, you know, the Realtors Association of Edmonton had a little comment here. So growing options for buyers with strong prices bring sellers to market. So growing options for buyers, well, as we've seen in the data, there's more listings hitting the market. Strong prices bring sellers to the market. And so, yeah, you look at the last beginning of 2025 and even just in December of last year, well, prices skyrocketed 40 grand on average across the board. So obviously, depending on what segment you're in, it's going to be a little bit different, but approximately 40 grand. And so in July, activity in Greater Edmonton area, residential sales market remained robust in June of 2025 with almost 2,900 homes sold and just over 4,200 listings added to The area with sales dipped 2.8% and new listings declined 10.9% compared to May. Year-over-year trends remain positive. Residential unit sales were up 1.2% from June, and new listings saw a notable 15.8% increase from the same time last year. Inventory levels have also edged upwards, with 6,800 residential properties available at the end of June, up 3.6% from May and 15%. So we got a lot more listings, and it's just always interesting. Like, I don't know, you can always just cherry pick the data. You could just like, well, it looks great from last month, and it looks even better from last year, but I don't know. It's just interesting, right? The average selling price across all residential property types rose 0.1% from May, up 5.9% year over year. So again, it's been great. Like things have definitely increased a lot there. And bench price reflecting 0.0%. So June's market remains steady overall with year-over-year gains in sales and listings. However, we're starting to see signs of slowdown in some categories. Particular semi-detached and row homes where sales dipped and time on market increased. That said, with inventory growing and strong listing activity, the greater Edmonton area continues to offer opportunities for both buyers and sellers as we head into the second half of the year. Well, I appreciate that insight. What are your guys' thoughts? Do you agree with this? Do you agree with this? Do you live there? Let me know your thoughts here because I'm genuinely interested. And so we've gone over a bunch of information here, but what the heck does this mean for you, right? So what are you thinking? So if you're buying right now, or if you're thinking about buying here in the near future in Edmonton, well, there's just a few things I want to mention to you, right? So more listings equal more choices. So right now, as Darlene had said, that they're having more listings that are happening in the market. So you're gonna have more choices. And there's gonna be less competition, which equals more time to shop around, do your thing, which is a good thing for you. You want that. You don't want the pressure of having to like go to a property and just like basically put an offer on it right away. And so, in my opinion, sellers are just gonna have to be more negotiable, right? So we're kind of in this balanced market right now, or at least when the prices have balanced. But if prices tend to trend downwards, which again, in my opinion, they're going to, sellers are going to have to be more negotiable. So you're going to have more leverage. And then, like I said a little bit earlier, prices are trending downwards. And so this kind of leads me to the thought of like, if you can wait and your life situation, your life scenario doesn't require you to buy a house right away, then maybe you do wait. Maybe you wait till wintertime when no one else wants to buy a house, but it's advantageous because seasonally speaking, it's usually when prices are the lowest. And who knows how far prices are going to go down, right? We've seen in the beginning quarter of 2025, prices skyrocketed 40 grand. Now are they going to go down 40 grand? Who knows, right? So there's a bunch of variables there. And then lastly, it's still important to get pre-approved. There's nothing worse than going and seeing a bunch of properties, finding one you absolutely love, writing an offer, and then it's like, oh, time to remove the finance subject. You can't because you didn't do your due diligence ahead of time. So get pre-approved, get those numbers in check before going out, would be my advice to you. And then if you're selling in 2025 right now, a couple months, sometime in 2025, this is going to be my thoughts for you. And so you need to price it right from the start. You don't want to go after some crazy prices. You want to price right from the start, especially now that we're seeing maybe a crack in the market, what's happening here. Prices appear that they could be starting to go down more. And so when you come to the market, you just want to be the best neighborhood the best price in the neighborhood so that you stick out. And then that kind of leads me to my next point is that make your home stand out, right? Fix what's broken, trim up the hedges, paint the things that need to be painted, right? You just want people to go into your home and look like it's been well taken care of, that there's no issues, because you need to stand out. And then be ready for longer sales. So Darlene in the stats basically stated that more days on market, every property type, there's becoming more days on market. So it's taking longer for your house to sell. And so just be ready for that. And then be flexible on terms. And so as we're shifting more into a buyer's market, I would say, You're going to have to be flexible. Now, you don't have to bend over backwards to whatever their desires are, but you just need to be flexible. And maybe you state that as the leverage piece. And then I want you to know your reason for selling, right? It's so important. If you were selling your house in early 2025, well, it was pretty easy. Like you got more than what you probably asking as prices were getting quite out of hand. But now it's like it's kind of plateaued. And so, especially if it starts to nosedive here or starts to go down again, well, you might be expected to do a price reduction. You might not get what you're wanting. It might take a little bit longer. You might have constant showings, constant people bugging you and harassing you. And so you need to know your reason for selling because this is a stressful time. It's a stressful time to sell your house. And so what I say is just know your reason for selling because when it gets tough, the last thing you want to do is go through all this stuff and then not eventually sell your house. So as you can see, there's a lot going on here in the Edmonton real estate market. There was crazy price growth in the early quarter of 2025, and now it's stagnant. So which way is it going to go? I don't know. What do you think? Like looking at the stats, looking at the data, what's your opinion on what's going on? I'm actually genuinely curious though. And just full disclosure, I don't live in Edmonton. I just do market reports on major cities around Canada, essentially. And so, but if you do need somebody in Edmonton, I'm well connected with other realtors. I'd be more than happy and qualified to help you. So if you need introduction, just let me know. And if you want to stay informed what's going on in Edmonton, especially with what's happening here, who knows, it could go either way. Just make sure to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out and you get notified when I come out with next month's report. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.